From ruins, we prosper. Sometimes it's a simple inscription that makes all the difference. From the low-key to the over-the-top, the Fountains of Guild Wars tells us what different civilizations think beauty and meaning is. After all, fountains are either decorations or places to fetch fresh drinking water. See if you can find the ones on the list I believe might actually be the latter, and we'll look into that aspect at the end of the video. Let's go through the list together. First up, 10. Number 10 is the Super Fountain you can find within the Super Adventure Box, with intricate frothing animations that actually manage to make for convincing water movement despite the restriction to low-bit graphics. As well as this super cool monkey holding aloft their heroic sword and checking out any adventurer entering the Super Adventure over the rim of their sunglasses. The water spray of the sword falls in all directions, which summons an image of this same fountain covered in an elegant membrane of water, which creates a mirage-like effect on the monkey, making it appear to move. You can also donate baubles to the waters of the fountain to make rockets shoot out of the sword in a stunning display of fireworks. The discarded continue coins of other adventurers lie under the water, watched over by these frogs, who also deserve a bit of kudos. Each frog has a distinct pattern of moss growing on them. They did a lot with the graphical limitations of this pseudo low-bit graphical landscape, enough that it truly deserves a spot on this list, but personally I really dislike the Super Adventure Box. It's one of those things that don't match with the general fantasy tones of the game and just seems weirdly misplaced. So while there's great interactivity and detail in this fountain, I condemn it to the 10th spot on this list. 9. Number 9 is the Griffin water pitcher fountains, a classic Crichton design which is proven by the many places they can be found around the game. In Divinity's Reach is in the square of Rurikton. Minister Caudecus has one in a prominent spot in his private garden, more on that garden later, and in the PvP battleground, the Battle for Kylo, it appears as well. The design of this fountain is rather simplistic with the two low pixel griffins and the grey stonework, but it has the absolute charming addition of having a central gateway that you can walk through, making it a bit of a triumphal arc. I can imagine in real life how it would sound to stand in there, two streams of water falling on either side, reverberating the sound slightly as it bounces in through the openings. I honestly think it would be one of my favorite places to walk through if I lived in Divinity's Reach. I mentioned that the design was simplistic, but let me be clear that I don't think this means that designers were lazy about it. There are many great details to be found here, like how they've cut these little copies into the stonework for the water to fall into. I imagine that greatly reduces how much splashing innocent bystanders have to endure. It also has the signs of moss climbing up the sides of the doorways for that little bit of extra spirit. All in all, this Griffin water pitcher fountain gets the 9th spot on this list. 8. In the very center of the desert city of Amnoon stands a plaza pyramid. Here, most inhabitants find their necessary services such as banking, the trading post, and even the opportunity for dining. It's in this bustling community hub that we find our 8th spot. The Geometrical fountain taking up the very center, guarded by 4 vigilant palm trees and backdrop for Herald Kenan. The fountain consists of 8 layers of squares offset from each other to create octagons, with water flowing between them. It's honestly pretty cool for just being that imaginative and different, especially to those gothic water pitcher fountains we've brought up before, and it doesn't stop there. Within the water, 8-sided and 6-sided forms, I know they're called octagons and hexagons, but I was beginning to feel a bit pretentious with all the Latinized words, so 8 and 6-sided they are. They form stars in between them. It's cool. I like shapes, but I also like to put them all in the square hole. That's another video. Just look up Everything Goes in the Square Hole and be prepared for either the funniest or most frustrating minute of your life. Anyhow, there's a lot of asides in this one, but I do truly think that this fountain is beautifully made, but it doesn't do a lot. So I guess it ends up in the 8th place. 7. Number 7 is found deep in the jungle, where the White Mantle has set up operations and... Oh, what's that? The fountain that literally has the Guild Wars 2 wiki page for fountain is locked behind a raid, and I'm not good enough to do those? Oh, cut this part. We'll pretend to have never picked it. The 7th spot is reserved for the fountain at Wizard's Tower, which has a very classical marble look and one large central pillar bowl where the water spill from. Topped of all things with a pinecone. I don't know of any Tyrian pinecone association, so I'm just gonna have to assume they got the idea from the real-life fountains based on the Thyrsus, the iconic staff of the Greek god Dionysus, which was hung with grapevines and topped with a pinecone. And honestly, with all this marble and gold, the wizards do seem to have a decadent side. Huh. Sooner or later, I'll be able to figure out how to join their secret Dionysian sect. Perhaps the lanterns are a hint. This fountain has 5 of them. It's an interesting choice that the blue is the lighted version, with golden being the state you find lanterns in for your lamp lighting achievements. This means these are all turned on and functional. Perhaps there's a hidden map in this intricate detailing on the bottom of the fountain, or perhaps the color codes of the flowers in the 2 garden beds. No, I can't seem to find any good clues here, but I'm on to you, Isgarin! Know that I'll be looking for anything I find in the Wizard's Tower in the future. For now, though, I'll put this opulent fountain at number 7.
6.
Some fountains seem to be classics, so much so that they aren't simply put in multiple places like the Griffin water pitcher one, but instead get regional variants. And thus, this feminine water pitcher statue. Found in Jin's Dominion and Armistice Bastion, the plinth with the statue is identical, but they are placed onto fitting local settings. The version in Jin's Dominion has integrated greenery and falls only a short distance into a shallow pool. The pinkish lily pads float next to a simple rock with a few select items for recreation. It's a shame we're always trying to kill each other when we visit this battleground, as there's significant tranquility to be found here, listening to the water bubble and the wind rustling the leaves. One could argue that this fountain is part of a greater waterwork, as the raised platform behind it has 6 trickling water streams gently hugging the walls and flowing into the pool beneath them. This gentle variation stands in contrast to the one in Armistice Bastion, where the fountain overlooks 2 majestic stairways and the water slips out between 2 rails to cascade down the length of the stairs and smash into the pool below. This causes mist to form at the bottom, which is one of the telltale signs of waterfalls as well. The design of the ball itself is also reminiscent of the Deltramore dwarven design, with the line work, especially at the rim, reminding me of the decorative line work in the Deltramore Ballisti we covered in a previous episode on siege weapons. All in all, these fountains topped with the feminine water pitcher is a cool way to develop assets instead of simply reusing them across zones, making them fit in. It can make you wonder what sculpture might have been requested to build them. Perhaps they had a standard template they were known for and worked that into whatever specific wishes their client might have had. It clearly deserves to be higher on this list than Griffin water pitcher, which lands it on number 6.
5.
This is where I first placed the fountain that actually ended up on first place, until I found something exciting that made it shoot up. Instead, this is in the theme of broken fountains, but this time on purpose. Number 4 is the fountain that Minister Caudecus built in his own manor. The first time you see it running into Beetleton, you are greeted by the manor overlooking the village. From this perspective, you can see some rocks floating in the air above the hedges of the garden. These are of a whitish color, probably marble, and from some of them water is spouting and creating small waterfalls that disappear out of sight. As you move about Beetleton, the central pieces of the fountain seem to be forming some sort of shape, but from behind it's still difficult to make out what it's supposed to be. There's a dungeon where you have to visit the manor itself, and here it's possible to see the fountain from the front. The water lands in a pond with exotic birds waddling about, and the main piece of the fountain can be centered. Moving in, the pieces fall into place and form a head, but not just any head. It is the likeness of Minister Caudecus himself, sculpted of marble and enchanted to float above his garden, forever staring down at his guests. Nothing less to be expected by someone who nicknames himself the Wise, I guess. The visual must have taken quite a bit of finagling to get done right, so the completed face itself looks so seamless. In game it speaks to the hubris of the Crichton nobility, especially the ones aligned with the White Mantle, but out of game it speaks to the dedication put into the environments from day one of this game. Therefore, it had to broach top 5.
4.
Moving from the Crichton nobility's manors to the Maguma jungle, number 4 is the Gold-flaked fountain in the Guildhall Gilded Hollow. At first glance, the fountain is only mildly interesting. Raised on a dais of gold, made in a darker shade of the same material, with turquoise gems as detailing, and a large jungle flower growing out of the top. It's pretty to be sure, but not exactly stand out in the environment. So, as you might have guessed, it is the details that secured this fountain such a high spot on this list. When viewed up close, the fountain bowl has a wood-like layer with a blue paint and a decorative pattern, which makes me think of the Great Gatsby in style. In addition to the Mesoamerican roots that Taria calls forth from the legend of El Dorado, this fountain mixes that with the Roaring Twenties in some of its patterns. I'm fairly certain it's not actually intended to mix those styles, but I can't unsee the similarities in the golden inlay. The same thing is true of the inside of the ball. Those golden lines are forming semi-geometrical patterns, and by now you might have noticed the coolest detail. The water is absolutely filled with golden flakes, gently being pushed along the current, falling over the side and landing in the basin below. This in-water detailing is mesmerizing and something I hadn't seen anywhere else in the game. If you've seen this or any other effect like it, please let me know in the comments. I don't think there's gonna be enough for a video on water effects, but I would love to put some of them into related videos, because honestly, I think these ways of modifying water effects to contain something else is brilliant detailing job by the developers, and it's the main reason this fountain gets to be 4th.
3.
Number 3 is found in the domain of Vabi. A tribute to Palawa Joko's eternal glory, this fountain still works even though the entire palace around it is in ruins. I'm sure there'll be no disgusting twist on this magnificence. Just don't look at the chapters for this video. Instead, wonder with me at how many layers this fountain contains. At the bottommost layer, an overgrown pillar floats with 4 small waterfalls forming from the fountain. This was likely trimmed and kept at the height of Joko's power, but as the Elder Dragons have converged and that annoying Tyrian commander invaded, much of Joko's realm has temporarily fallen into disrepair. Looking at it from above, we can see that this fountain has yet another layer. Water falls down from this tower, floating in a circle of grass and domed with a crystalline glass mosaic. The ambience here is serene, with a clear water flowing and the tower slowly spinning. You can almost forget about the ruins around us and just enjoy this peaceful spot. Oh, but what's this? We're not at the top yet. The water is coming from the building above us. Let's go check that out. Oh,
Can you help?
so this is where the water gathers. It's a shallow pool in the middle of a spa. Throw pillows are scattered about and a couple of braziers are burning steadily, and nobles are hanging out around and in the water. And are those dirty clothes and full chamber pots? Oh, this does not seem sanitary at all. The source of the beautiful, if ruined, fountainscape below is the bathwater coming from this noble spa. And to think I thought it was serene and clear. Though I only saw this twist as the last thing I did while recording the video, it certainly is unique. I say put it on the third spot for ingenuity and then forget about this experience.
2.
And getting away from the decadent nobles, we move to the technocratic bureaucrats of Ratasum. Because one thing I have to give them is style points. The fountain in the middle of their main city doubles as a portal to their council chambers, which makes it the symbolic doorway to power. And appropriately, it's one of the coolest looking fountains in the game. Water flows out from the floating square, which contains the council chambers, which I hope doesn't have any bathing facilities. It cascades down into a smaller platform with holographic flowers growing out the side and continues in neatly made tunnels and fall into a larger bowl. This bowl must contain some sort of Asuran teleportation technology as the water never overflows. The bottom of the bowl is made of glass, so we can look up through it and see the 6 waterfalls from the platform above, falling into this inverted water pyramid, where the water makes the light play mesmerizingly in the dais below, which in turn has its own circle of water that sparkles. The light play is slow and gentle, so with multiple tiers, architectural design adjusted for scattering of light, and holographic flowers, as well as the functionality as a portal into the Arcane Council, this fountain gets kicked off the first place but lands solidly on second.
1.
At the top of this list is the Lion Atlas Fountain. It could once be found in Lion's Ark, but then everything changed when the Scarlet Nation attacked. Luckily, there's still a place in the game where it can be viewed in its former glory. In the PvP zone Revenge of the Capricorn, this fountain stands proud in the very center of the battleground. First up, there's the heavy symbolism of a huge golden lion looming over a map of Tyria, signifying the dominance and reach of Lion's Ark. This is surrounded by metal plates of ships, probably the proud navy of the very same city-state, that sail even on dangerous waters as shown by the sea serpent motif. The water part of the fountain, as the astute of you have probably already noticed while I was describing the symbols as if writing a 3rd grade English essay, comes from these fish whose mouths spit water. This has the lovely detail of unique ways to play out. In one animation, each fish spits in turn, in another they spit into each other's mouths in arcs, and in a third they all spit together. The word spit might devalue these descriptions a little bit, but I honestly think it looks awesome. Very much like how many real-life fountains work, designing variation in the waterworks to make it more appealing. And saved for last, the inscription in golden letters and in New Crichton reach "From ruin, re-prosper." A significant sentence from the city-state with a troubled past, but especially one that has now survived Scarlet. Survived this very fountain being ruined along with the city. They have rebuilt. They prosper. And while I was originally going to place this fountain in 5th place, the inlaid proverb itself carried such deep significance for Lion's Arch that I had to elevate it to the very top of the list.
Debate.
So which ones did I actually think were for drinking water? Honestly, there are 3 I'm pretty certain of, and a couple that might be. The one in Anum, which is placed in the central square with great public access for the entire population. The one in the Wizard's Tower, which again has decently sized pool at the foot of the fountain. And the one in Gilded Hollow, though filled with gold flakes now, might have been a potential source of drinking water in the past. What makes these 3 the best candidates for me is the fact that they have bowls at the bottom containing water, small waterfalls that fall from a bowl above where a pitcher or jug could easily be inserted, as well as no statue spouting water for them, which would point in the direction of decoration. The super fountain, the water pitcher Griffin and Woman, and the Lion's Atlas all spout water from elaborate statues. This seems to indicate a preference for form over function, though I admit that this hasn't stopped previous generations in real life. Looking at the Trevi fountain in in Rome, it was made at the endpoint of one of their aqueducts and provided water that could be used for drinking, even though it was also ostentatiously decorated. Nowadays, it's a tourist attraction and you shouldn't be drinking from it, of course, but it points out that the above fountains might also be for drinking, though the moss on the super fountain and water pitcher Griffin makes them seem unattractive for that purpose. The feminine water pitchers seem clean though, so that one is potentially drinkable as well. The Lion Atlas does more spouting of water than containing water though, so it seems more unlikely as the water seems to be decorative. The Caudecus Head fountain has the water falling directly into the dirt of a small pool. The water might be drinkable as it falls, but the way it's set up in a social garden indicated to me that it was not for drinking. I don't want to drink the noble bathwater. The water in the Ratasum Council fountain is mostly out of reach, with only a shallow circle of water on the ground, and everyone who wants to go into the council chamber has to step over this water line. That seems a bit unsanitary for drinking purposes. So in conclusion on that, these fountains seem to be likely drinking water fountains, and these seem to be ornamental. Ending on the water pitcher griffins in the battle for Kylo that can be hit but not destroyed by siege weapons leaves me with a clumsily inserted but otherwise smooth transition into the previous episode on siege weapons. Go ahead and watch that next.